Hello, and on the gaming table today, we are taking another look at Mini-Warmaster, this time with a 2000 point playtest. So Mini-Warmaster, just a reminder, we're looking at doing battles in a smaller space, where one stand is one unit, and we halve all the distances. This lets you play a game of Warmaster on a much smaller table space. Now, to do that, there are some rules that have to change, and just as a quick summary of ones that have been discussed before, there is rear support for units, but no side support. There is also corner-to-corner contact only providing one base attack, and also having no rear support for corner-to-corner contact. These are balance measures for melee combat that make things more even and balanced for all the forces involved. Also, there are some modifications to spells and units, especially for things to do with missile fire and spells and units that could kill a unit in one go because of a number of attacks or something like this. So we tone this down so that missile fire and spells take their appropriate place in a Warmaster battle. Now, today we're going to have High Elves facing off against Tomb Kings. This is the High Elf force, and some of the different units we've got on here are Dragon Riders and Elven Bolt Throwers. We'll see how the rules change for those shortly. For the Tomb Kings, they've also got a 2000 point force, and the different units they have here include a Sphinx, a Skull Chucker, and 2 Bone Throwers. Now, what rules have to change a little bit to accommodate the ideas of Mini-Warmaster? All of these are for balance, to make sure that certain units don't become overpowering or that certain spells don't become too deadly. So to start out, for the High Elves, Dragon Riders and Dragon Mounts are reduced to 1 shooting attack. And for Dragon Riders, you can only buy 1 for every 2000 points in the army, and they start badly hurt. That means their number of hits is reduced to 3, and they have 3 melee attacks as base. For Elven Bolt Throwers, we just tone it down to 2 shooting attacks for the stand, just so that they are not too deadly. And for the Storm of Stone spell, we reduce that to 1 attack for each unit affected, and similarly the Hail of Destruction spell, also 1 attack. So both of these spells down to 1 attack from the normal 3. For the Tomb Kings, we have some very similar changes. A Sphinx may buy 1 per 2000 points. It starts badly hurt, so it has 3 hits and 2 base attacks. Now, a Bone Giant in the regular game doesn't have a badly hurt status, so this is just kind of a manual change. May buy 1 per 2000 points and then reduce it manually to 3 attacks instead of 6, but keep the 4 hits. For the Skull Chucker, again, reduce that to 2 shooting attacks rather than 3, and again may only buy 1 per 2000 points. And for the Zombie Dragon, reduce it to 1 shooting attack. The Raise Dead spell creates 1 stand of skeletons, not 3. And the Death Bolt spell similarly goes to 1 shooting attack, not 3. Now, the table we're playing on today is 72 centimeters from top to bottom and 120 centimeters wide. So this is about 4 foot by 2.5 foot, 2 and a bit foot. This gives us a smaller space to play the game on, but will accommodate 2000 points fairly easily, as you'll see in a second. On the table, there are 5 pieces of terrain that are acting as woods. We're on kind of a desert themed table here, so maybe there's not a lot of trees there, but there's still dense terrain, blocking line of sight, and entered only by infantry, and give that infantry defended status. There are 3 tent areas here. These are classed as built-up areas, so they can be entered by any units, but infantry and artillery within there will gain defended status. They also block line of sight, dense terrain. We also have 2 fields. These don't allow war machines or chariots to enter them, and they also stop the charge bonus of any unit being charged there. However, other units can freely enter and leave. And finally, we have some tall linear obstacles. These can only be crossed by infantry, but infantry or artillery behind them can gain defended status. You can see here that they are quite tall terrain features, so that's why I class them as tall obstacles rather than short obstacles that could also be crossed by cavalry. Now, for starting out and scouting, the Elves committed their 2 Reaver units to scouting, while the Tomb Kings committed nothing. The Tomb Kings rolled a 4, the Elves rolled a 3, plus their 4 points from the Reavers gives them 7, so the Elf Scouts will deploy first. So the Elf Scouts deployed at opposite ends of the line, and then the Tomb Kings deployed their entire army. So here you can see across the width of the table, plenty of room for 2000 points when you're only doing 1 stand as 1 unit. In the middle, there's a core block of infantry and war machines with the Sphinx, and on the wings there are 2 sets of cavalry units. Then the High Elves made their deployment. On the left, they deployed a fairly strong mobile brigade with a dragon rider, a giant eagle, and some cavalry and chariot. On the centre, they have a large block of infantry, and on the right, they have more cavalry under the command of a wizard. So, Tomb King's turn 1. The Lich Priest on the left flank withdraws his cavalry behind the wood out of line of sight of the Elven cavalry on the opposite side of the table. Similarly, the Lich Priest on the other side is also quite cautious, just bringing 2 units of cavalry forward. He's trying to bait a charge from the High Elves on the opposite side, which he would then counterattack with his chariots. In the centre, a Lich Priest tries to move a brigade forward, including the War Machine. However, fails the order. They only get a half-pace move forward. Another Lich Priest, the last one of the 4, brings a brigade forward, and then the Tomb King takes charge, bringing another brigade forward in the centre, and then the characters move as appropriate, bringing themselves more ready to advance in the next turn. You can see the core of the Tomb King infantry is headed for the built-up areas in the middle of the table. The High Elves take their first turn. On the right, the wizard launches the cavalry round on a flanking move. He can only get in one because his command radius is so short, he can't get a second order in, but they're getting themselves in a position to flank round the wood in the distance. On the left, the hero orders the dragon rider and the cavalry forward, not committing them too far at this stage. And then he brings the chariot and the giant eagle up as well. In the centre, one of the wizards launches the brigade of infantry forward over the high obstacle and towards the built-up area. And then the general takes over, bringing a brigade, including the bolt thrower, towards the built-up area. And he gets off a second order with them, and third, which puts the bolt thrower and the archers on the edge of the built-up area, with line of sight to the Tomb Kings. He then moves the last remaining brigade forward, and gets 2 orders off, putting them in a position to just touch the built-up area in the distance. Could have tried another order here, but he would have been at least at -5. Probably worth the roll anyway, but he didn't actually do it. And the characters begin to reposition, getting in front of the units. The wizard advancing to try and get a spell off. The wizard attempts to cast Hail of Destruction. So he rolls the dice and manages to get that one off. He needs a 5+ and rolls a 6. But then his hit roll fails to hit the Sphinx. Needing a 4, he only rolled a 3. So that's the end of the Elven turn. On to Tomb King's turn 2. To begin with, the Carrion have a home-back move that brings them back towards the Tomb King. They both roll 5 on the dice. They can therefore move 25 centimetres, half distance, and make it back to the Tomb King. On the right flank, the Lich Priest just breaks up his cavalry. Again, he's trying to bait a charge from the opposite side of the table. While on the left flank, the Lich Priest withdraws his cavalry further. He failed the order, but because they can still have a half-pace move, they withdrew further back behind the wood. His companion Lich Priest on this side tries to order the brigade forward, fails again, manages to move them forward a little with a half-pace move. And then the last Lich Priest, number 4, manages to bring the brigade forward towards the built-up area and then enter the built-up area, unable to charge because they couldn't see, but in a position to shoot. He then works with the Sphinx and the Bone Thrower, moving them once, and then twice, and then a third time, getting the Bolt Thrower in range and also having the Sphinx ready to charge in a future turn. The Tomb King then orders a brigade forward, and with a second order gets it into the edge of the built-up area, then brings the last remaining units off to the flank, and moves the Carrion into a position where they can threaten both the centre and the flank with the Dragon Rider. Satisfied with that, all of the Tomb King characters move. You can see them moving closer to the units to keep everything within command, as most of the commanders, the Lich Priests, only have a command range of 10 centimeters in Mini-Warmaster. In the shooting phase, the undead archers in the built-up area have a go at the elven archers in front of them. They score 1 hit, which is not saved, so those elves now carry a hit. The archers in the other built-up area take some shots at the spearmen behind, but both miss. The archer on the extreme flank here just has line of sight and distance to the elven archers at the bottom of the screen, however he misses his hit roll. And the bone thrower similarly tries to shoot into the built-up area, but with no success. For spells, the Lich Priests focus on Doom and Despair, this being really the only spell which is in range for them that can cause a reasonable effect at the moment. So on the flank, they try and slow down the Silver Helms over here, however the roll of 1 fails. On the opposite flank, trying to Doom and Despair the Dragon Rider, a roll of 2 fails. Again, focusing on the flank cavalry units, Doom and Despair, another 2, another failure. And finally, the last Lich Priest is just within range of the Dragon Rider, this time manages to get the Doom and Despair off, and so the Dragon Rider may not charge in the following turn. High Elves turn 2. The Elves begin by homing back their Giant Eagle, which makes it to the hero. They then try and order the cavalry forward, however they fail the order, so the cavalry just makes a half-pace move to bring them level with the eagle and provide a concentrated front against a Tomb King charge. On the other flank, the wizard gets 1 move to bring the cavalry up next to him, and then a second order is successful to bring them around and facing off against the skeleton cavalry. In the center, the wizard withdraws the 2 units that were just touching the edge of the built-up area, brings them back in line with the bolt thrower. And then the general brings the other brigade of 4 up into a solid line to face off against all those skeleton archers. Characters then move, getting ready for future moves, and ready for spells as well. To start with, in shooting, the elves take some shots at what they can see. In this case, the closest unit here is the Sphinx. There's 1 hit on the Sphinx, but it makes its armor roll. 3 bowmen here take shots at the skeleton archers in the built-up area, needing 5s to hit. They score 2 hits out of 3, so that's 2 wounds on the skeleton archers. Trying to eliminate that unit, the wizard tries to cast the Hail of Destruction spell. On a roll of a 6, manages to get the spell off, however needs a 4+ to hit, rolls a 2, so therefore does not manage to score 1 more hit on that unit. Over here, the Hail of Destruction goes off again on the second roll. Remember that the High Elves get 2 rolls because of their high magic, essentially. Manages to get it off, 5+ on the second roll. Does get a hit. I forgot here, made a mistake that there should not be an armor save here. I rolled an armor save for the cavalry, and they saved it. Now, if they'd have been driven back, it may have changed something in future turns, but there were also mistakes on the other side later on as well. So even though I made a mess here, and this should have caused a drive back, I don't think it affected things too much in the long run. Now, hits are discounted at the end of the phase, and we move on to the end of the turn. So, Tomb King's turn 3. The Tomb King, seeing the situation with the cavalry, decide it's better to charge than be charged, so they send the skeleton cavalry into the Silver Helms. By doing this, they also run over the wizard, who must retreat, and he falls back to the Reavers. Note that the Reavers are in corner-to-corner contact, so the wizard here is safer than if he had joined the Silver Helms. Then the Lich Priest tries to order the brigade of war machines and infantry. However, he fails. They just stumble up to the edge of the woods. On the other flank, the Lich Priest is doing a little more dancing, trying to bait a charge. And then the Lich Priests in the middle try to get the Sphinx into action to charge into the Elven line. However, on a roll of 10, it fails, and it can't charge because you're not allowed to charge on a failed order, so it just moves a little forward to soak up more arrow fire. The Lich Priest on the other side of the built-up areas manages to move his infantry brigade around the edge of the built-up area, putting them in the flanks of the Elves, and on a second order charges into the flank. The Elves stand and shoot and score 1 hit on the skeleton archers. The Tomb King then orders the brigade on the left to the front of the built-up area where they can get some decent shooting in. And then shooting phase begins with the bone thrower taking some shots at the Elven archers. Unfortunately, both shots are misses. It needs 5+ as the Elves are in a built-up area. The archers, however, have a bit more luck, scoring 2 hits on the elves in front of them. Those elves fail both of their armor saves and so take 2 hits. The other skeleton archers are shooting at the archer just below and to the right of the wizard, as the archers more immediately to their front are engaged in combat. They score 1 hit, but the elves make their armor save. Now the Tomb Kings try to get their spells into action. Casting a Raise Dead into the combat fails, so those skeleton cavalry will be on their own against the Silverhelms. Similarly, in the middle of the field, a Raise Dead spell also fails to go off to try and support the charge into the flank. A Death Bolt is attempted to try and knock out that unit of elven archers there by giving them another wound, however the spell fails to go off. But Doom and Despair does work, once again dooming the Dragon Rider and not allowing him to charge in the next turn. Now, this was a mistake here. The elves, having taken 2 hits, should have done a drive back, but I forgot about that. I keep thinking of skeletons and supporting ranks, stopping skeletons going back, and no confusion. So I kind of did the same thing with the elves here, forgot that they should have fallen back and would probably have been confused, and so the hits were removed with no further effect. In hand-to-hand combat, the skeletons charged in. Now, they only get 2 attacks because they don't get a charge bonus over the fields. They did score 2 hits, one of which was saved by the elven archers. And then the elves rolled 2 hits back, and the spearmen attempted to as well. However, there was only 1 hit scored on the skeleton archers, which have no armor save. And the skeletons, having taken 2 hits, but having caused 1 and having 1 rear support from the spearmen in behind, drew the combat to all. Therefore, both sides have to fall back. The elves had to fall back first, and so positioned themselves like so, whereas the skeletons tried to move around the flank so that they can get a flank charge in a following turn. And then excess hits were removed, this being the last action of the turn. Now, on the flank here, the skeleton cavalry charged in. They scored well in the beginning, getting 4 hits on the Silverhelms, which resulted in 2 armor saves and 2 wounds. The Silverhelms fighting back managed to get 3 hits. The Reavers missed, unfortunately, but the skeletons managed to save 2 of those 3 hits and so only took 1. That means in the final analysis, the Tomb Kings won this initial combat, 2 points to 1, and the Silverhelms and Reavers were forced to withdraw. The skeleton cavalry decided to follow up. In the second round, the skeleton cavalry scored 4 hits, again 2 saved by the Silverhelms, so one of those units has now taken 3 hits and will become a casualty. Silverhelms in return managed to score 4 hits, and this time the armor of the skeleton cavalry did not save them. The Reavers also scored a hit on the side, and so the skeleton cavalry took 3 hits each and disappeared along with 1 unit of Silverhelms. With no opponents in front of them, the elves reformed and took themselves into a position to skirt round the woods in the next turn. Excess hits were removed, and that's the end of the turn. So, 2 units of skeleton cavalry versus 1 Silverhelms at the moment. So the Tomb Kings 2 towards their breakpoint, the High Elves 1. High Elves turn 3. Started out with an initiative charge by the small brigade on the right into the small brigade of Tomb King's skeletons. The skeletons stood in shot and managed to score 1 hit on the elves when they failed their armor save, so they'll carry that 1 wound into the combat. The elf mage tried to bring his cavalry round again, managed to get the order off to get his cavalry to move, but unfortunately he can't issue a second order as they're too far away outside his command radius. Now, there was an opportunity here that the hero spotted, though. With his eagle, he could find a way to charge the flank of the bone thrower. He rolled a 3 and sent the eagle in. He then tried to move his cavalry, but they failed the roll, so he just withdrew them back and put them in line with his dragon rider. Then the elf wizard in front decided to play a cunning ploy on the Sphinx. He sent in 2 units against the front of the Sphinx. This looks dangerous, but remember that the eagle is behind attacking the bolt thrower. The general then tried to bring more units into bear here by moving his main brigade of infantry against one of the built-up areas. So the archers and the spearmen went charging in. In the stand and shoot, there were no hits on the elven archers. The characters then began to reposition, getting ready for future charges. And the general also joined the combat with the archers against the Sphinx. A little bit of a bold move. Let's see how it plays out. In the shooting phase, the elf mages here started out by trying Hail of Destruction on the war machines. Unfortunately, even with 2 rolls, didn't manage to get the spell off. In the center, considering there's some hand-to-hand combat going on, they tried to cast Storm of Stone. Again, it didn't work. Coming to the combat phase, the giant eagle charging the bone thrower easily scored 3 hits, easily enough to wipe out the bone thrower. The bone thrower missed in return. Now, this was the cunning plan, because now that the eagle has line of sight just to the Sphinx, it can follow up into the back of the Sphinx. Now that Sphinx is in serious trouble. The attacks from the front by the general and the archers didn't manage to do anything, unfortunately, but from the rear the eagle got a hit, which was not saved by the Sphinx, and so it carries 1 wound. The Sphinx in return managed to get 1 hit. It only has 2 attacks, but unfortunately the archers saved. So the score was 0 for the Tomb Kings and 2 for the High Elves, 1 for the hit and 1 for the supporting rank of Spearmen. Therefore, the Sphinx must withdraw, but it's surrounded, and so it dies. Good victory to the High Elves. They then reformed and put themselves in a position to protect themselves, although the eagle is probably going to get countercharged by the carrion. On the other side of the field, the High Elf archers charged in, scored 2 hits on the skeletons, and the skeletons scored 1 hit back, which was not safe. That meant that combat here was 3 each. There were 2 hits scored by each side, and each side has 1 supporting rank of spearmen in rear support, and so 3 all means another draw. The High Elves were forced to withdraw first, and then the Tomb Kings. Now, they didn't try and go further around the flank, because that would take them outside of command range from the Lich Priest, so they were kind of stuck with having to go in frontally next time. In the main fight in the middle, the archers charging in managed to score 3 hits on the skeletons, and the skeletons back managed to score 2 hits, which were not saved by the archers. Therefore, in this one, combat is a 4-all draw. We seem to be seeing a lot of draws here. So 2 hits inflicted by each side. Both sides have supporting ranks of spearmen. It's a draw. The elves fell back, and they fell back on either side of the bolt thrower. The skeletons fell back just a few millimeters, putting them still able to see outside the built-up area and ready for more action next turn. So at the end of the turn, the Tomb Kings are down 4 units, 4 on their way to the breakpoint of 13. The High Elves still only 1 casualty. Tomb Kings turn 4 begins with the Lich Priest turning his war machines around to take some shots at these Silver Helms and Reavers. On the other flank, a little bit more dancing around to try and provoke a charge, and also bringing the chariots a little closer as well. In the center, the Lich Priest sends the archers and spearmen frontally into the unit that they were fighting last turn. Tried a second order on the brigade right beside him, however it failed because they're in dense terrain. The elves stood and shot and scored 1 hit on the archers. The Tomb King then ordered the carrion into the front of the eagle, and then he turned the brigade, which had line of sight to the archers and the general's unit, on the flank here and charged them headlong into that field. Now, if the Tomb King here can win that fight and the general is killed, then that's game over very, very quickly. The elves stood and shot and scored 1 hit on the skeleton archers. How important will that be? The characters then begin to move, Lich Priest taking up a central position here, and others moving to get ready to cast spells. Here in the shooting phase, lots and lots of hits were done to those Silver Helms, including some from the war machines that allowed no armor save, and so those Silver Helms disappeared in a puff of smoke. In the middle of the field, there was some shooting from the archers in the remaining built-up area, however both shots missed. And then for spells, the Lich Priest here trying to cast Doom and Despair on the Reavers so that they couldn't charge, failed. Over here, this Lich Priest also failed to Doom and Despair the Dragon Rider, so now perhaps he can charge next turn. In the middle, an attempt was made to raise dead into this combat. The Elves had a Dispel scroll but decided not to use it, even though this spell went off, and a new unit of skeletons appeared to join this combat in corner-to-corner contact. This was decided to be better. Here they will get one attack here without drawing in the Spearman in behind. Here, the other Lich Priest attempted to cast Raise Dead into this combat, again trying to kill off the General's unit. However, this is when the Elves pulled out their Scroll of Dispelling to stop that spell. In combat, the one at the bottom field resulted in 2 hits on the archers from the skeletons, one of which was saved. And then in return, the archers did 1 hit on the skeleton archers to their front who have no armor save. This resulted in the Elves winning by 3 points to 2. So 2 wounds on the Tomb Kings and 1 supporting stand of Elves versus 1 wound on the Elves and 1 supporting Tomb Kings. The Undead withdrew and the Elves decided to follow up to try and eliminate the Archer. In the fight, the Elves scored 2 more hits. That will definitely eliminate the Archer there. And in return, 2 hits were taken on the Elves, one of which was saved. So in this part of the combat, it was 2-all. Even though those skeleton archers were destroyed, there are other units in contact here, so we still have to work out a combat result. And it's 2 versus 2. 1 wound on each side, plus 1 supporting stand on each side. The Elves were forced to withdraw first and made their move like so. The skeletons withdrew and put themselves possibly in a position to flank charge in the next turn. The Carrion charged into the Eagles. Now, the Carrion at the top here only gets 1 base attack because of corner-to-corner contact, but should have had 2 more. Should have had 1 for being a monster charging and another 1 for charging in the open. So should have rolled 3 dice, only rolled 2. However, 3 hits were put on the Eagle, and it saved 1 of them, resulting in 2 wounds, and it failed to hit coming back the other way. So it lost combat by 2, was forced to withdraw, and then the Carrion started to surround it. In the second round of combat, the Carrion managed to finish off the Eagle, and in return it scored a hit, but that will just be 1 hit carried over into the future combat. So the Eagle is destroyed, and the Carrion then decided to follow up into the flank of this important combat containing the Elven General. Will this tip the balance and cause the General to die? Let's see. The Tomb King, deciding that this is a really important fight, uses his ability to add 1 attack to one of the units. Now, the skeletons attacking 3 attacks frontally here. They don't get their charge bonus because of the terrain. They missed with those. There was 1 hit on the corner-to-corner skeleton archers versus high elf archers, and then 2 hits from the Carrion on the archers in the flank, and then some on the spearmen as well. However, the archers made 1 all-important armor save, which means they took 2 wounds, not 3, they weren't eliminated, and the spearmen at the back would also made their armor save. So the Elves have only taken 2 wounds here. Now, the archers get 2 attacks back, hit with both. The General also gets attacks and hit with an attack as well. The spearmen behind unfortunately did nothing. However, that was enough to draw the combat. The Tomb Kings suffered 3 wounds. They inflicted 2 wounds and have 1 stand of rear support skeletons. The other skeletons off to the more top of the picture don't count as rear support because they're behind a unit in corner-to-corner contact. The Elven Spearmen also don't count as support because they're contacted by the Carrion. So 3-all, and both sides have to withdraw. These are the positions after both of those moves have been made. Then the excess hits are discounted, and the Elven General has survived to fight another day. Here are the casualties. A little bit unlucky that the Elves didn't lose their General, perhaps. The Elves turn 4. In this situation, they seem to be controlling the centre of the battlefield, and they have a chance on the flank here to remove the war machines of the Tomb Kings. In the centre, things start out with an initiative charge by 3 units against the skeletons in the built-up area. They don't commit the last unit of spearmen because they have another plan for them. The Reavers get sent in against the war machines. The order is successful and they go charging in. However, the Bone Thrower gets to stand and shoot and manages to hit with 2 hits. So that Reaver unit has a few problems now. On the other flank, trying to send the Dragon Riders and the cavalry forward, the hero blunders. The result is that they decide there's no sense in getting killed and they just remain where they are this turn. The wizard here decides to bring the unengaged elven spearmen around to the flank to be able to support this small brigade against the skeletons directly in front of them. Then the general sends in his units against the exposed skeleton archers. They stand and shoot, but they miss. He then orders the bolt thrower into a different position to take some shots into the brigade in the built-up area. And with orders remaining, he decides to have a go with the chariot. His first order at a -2 is successful, and he brings the chariot into the flank of the skeleton cavalry. And a second order, also at -3, just goes off with a 7, and he charges into the flank of the cavalry. Here, the elves take some shots at the raised dead. They score a hit, which is not saved, and those skeletons are driven back slightly. The bolt throwers take 2 shots at the skeletons that are in the built-up area. They score 2 hits, and so those are marked. Maybe a spell can cause a little bit more damage there. In the combat on the side, the mage tries to cast Storm of Stone to aid the Reavers in the battle against the war machines. However, both of his chances to roll are unsuccessful. Again in the center, Storm of Stone is attempted, but again it fails. At the end of the shooting phase, excess hits are discounted, and we stand in this position. The chariot charges in against the skeleton cavalry, only causes 1 hit, which is unsaved. And then the skeletons, with only 1 attack back because they're charged in the flank, manage to score a hit, which is not saved. The combat is a draw, 1 each. Well, that was slightly unexpected. Both sides withdraw, and this is the position at the end of that combat. Things are not looking too good here. The chariot is exposed, but maybe they can try and countercharge. If the chariot is taken out, the dragon riders and the silver helms maybe have a chance. The Reavers charge in against the artillery and score 3 hits. And they unfortunately take 1 hit in return as well. That means both of the Skullchucker and the Reavers are eliminated. The mage stands alone. The Bone Thrower, with its fallback move, moves to a position where hopefully it can get some shooting off in coming turns. In the center, the charges of the elves runs into the skeleton spearmen. They only score 1 hit here because the skeletons are defended in the built-up area. It's not saved, so the skeletons take a wound, and then the skeletons back do not make any hits. Therefore, the skeletons lose the combat, they have nowhere to withdraw to, and so they run into their friends and are eliminated. That allows the elves to advance into the flank of the other combat. The last unit of bowmen at the bottom just repositions to put themselves into a position to cover the bolt thrower. In this new combat, the elves charging in managed to score 5 hits, all applied to the skeleton bowmen. That's going to eliminate them. The bowmen in return managed to get 1 hit on the elves to their front, and the spearmen, trying to get 1 hit on the elves to the side, don't manage to hit. The elves to the front fail their save, and so they will also take a wound. Now, that results in a combat result of 5 for the elves and 1 to the Tomb Kings. Tomb Kings caused 1 wound, whereas the elves caused 3, and each of those archers has a supporting stand of spearmen directly behind it. That forces the Tomb Kings to eliminate their archers, and then the spearmen must retreat sideways away from their flank contact towards the carrion. After a little bit of shuffling, this is the position that things are in. And then the elves decide to sue. So straight forward and up to the flank. In the ensuing combat, the spearmen take a lot of damage, and they try to get a hit back in, which fails. So they are eliminated, and the elves are only carrying 1 wound. 1 small brigade of 2 units then moves through the built-up area to threaten the flank of the Tomb King's remaining brigade, while the other charges into the flank of the carrion. So at the end of the turn, this is the situation with casualties. The Tomb Kings have taken quite a few. They are 10 on their way to 13 for their breakpoint. The High Elves are only at 4. The Tomb Kings need some revenge. They begin by homing back the 1 unengaged unit of carrion towards the Lich Priest on the side of the field. It actually puts it in quite a good position to be able to charge that chariot, so this move seems very beneficial. Then that Lich Priest sends in the cavalry into the face of the chariot and also manages to get the carrion in as well. So that chariot is now looking like it's in trouble. He tries to send in a third unit to finish it off, however the order fails, so they make a very small move to position themselves slightly again. The Lich Priest on the other flank notices that the Elf Mage is now unsupported by units and has nowhere to run, so he simply sends his skeleton infantry over the top and crushes the mage into the dust. He then moves the same brigade a second time and moves the Bone Thrower twice to bring it closer. However, the second time the order fails, so the Bone Thrower just moved a few centimeters forward overall. In the center, the Tomb King orders a charge here, sending his main brigade that is remaining into the Elven Archers. They stand and shoot, however, they miss. He then makes another order to send the skeletons just hidden by the tree into the spearmen there as well. And he tries to make one more order to send the last remaining unit of skeletons in as support, however, he blunders that one. They think he must be crazy, and they won't follow his orders very much in the future. With this combat being fairly pivotal, the Tomb King decides to commit both of his Lich Priests in the area into the combat. In the shooting phase, the Bone Thrower takes 2 shots at the Elves in the built-up area, however both miss. And then we start with Raise Dead spells. An attempt to bring something in against the chariot fails. While nothing is left to chance for this important combat, the Lich Priest using his Ring of Magic to automatically cast the spell and bring some skeletons in on the flank of the spearmen. With one unit already raised into this combat and not able to do another, the remaining Lich Priest tries Touch of Death. The spell goes off, and he manages to inflict 1 hit on the archers. So here's how we stand at the beginning of this combat. Finally, the remaining Lich Priest tries Doom and Despair on the archers in the built-up area to stop them charging into the flank of the brigade in the following turn. In the combat phase, the cavalry and the carrion attack the chariot. They score 3 hits, 1 of which is saved. And the chariot in return manages 1 hit, which is unsaved as well. However, it still loses the combat 2-1. After fallback and follow-up, this is the new position with the carrion in the flank, and they make short work of the chariot. The chariot doesn't manage to get any hits back in return, with it being saved by the cavalry, so it is eliminated. And then the Tomb King's forces fall back a little bit and present a united front for the inevitable countercharge. To get this combat out of the road, the Tomb King player lets the Elves attack his 1 remaining engaged carrion here. They score a hit, which is not saved. The carrion does not score a hit in return, and so the combat just shuffles down the line. In the second round of combat, the Elves finish off the carrion, and then they reform in the edge of the field. Now, in the main combat, lots of dice rolling here. On the right side of the image, we can see that there's lots of hits going in against the spearmen on the exposed flank, while on the left side, we can see that the archers and the Lich Priest there don't manage to cause any hits on the Elven archers to their front. That causes 3 hits on the spearmen. The Elves respond. They manage to get a couple of hits in. And at the end of the day, the Tomb Kings are victorious. 5 plays 3. 4 casualties inflicted, and they've got 1 supporting spearman, versus 2 hits inflicted by the Elves, and again, 1 supporting spearman. The Elves are forced to withdraw, and 1 stand of spearmen is eliminated. And then the Tomb Kings follow up, drawing in the Elf archers at the top of the screen. In the second round of combat, lots more dice rolling results in several hits on the Elves. They fight back, but the result is pretty obvious. At the end of the day, the Undead have inflicted 4 more hits onto the Elves, and they've got 2 combat bonus for 2 rear support skeletons, versus only 1 hit back from the Elves. That means another stand of archers is eliminated, Elf units are forced back, and the skeletons follow up. We'll see how this one carries over in the next turn. So casualties are beginning to even up here now. The Tomb Kings are on 11 on their way to 13. The High Elves are on 7 on their way to 9. Things are quite close. High Elves turn 5. The hero finally sends the Dragon Riders and the Cavalry in. He decides to do them against the Carrion and the Skeleton Cavalry because if he can eliminate these two units, that will take the Tomb Kings past their breakpoint. In the center, the General begins by moving his brigade that was in the field to the edge of the built-up area in the flank of the Tomb King brigade, and then with a second successful order, sends them into the combat. This gives him another chance to break the Tomb Kings. The characters begin to join combats. The hero joins the Reavers, and the general joins the archers, trying to finish them off. To try and assist, the elf mages try to cast Storm of Stone in the middle of the field. However, a Dispel Scroll puts paid to that to give the Tomb Kings a chance. With no shooting, we go straight into combat. Over on the flank, the Elven Cavalry charges in. The Dragon Rider manages 1 hit, and the Elven Cavalry manages 1 hit only. So 2 hits taken and 1 saved by the Cavalry means only 1 hit taken. That wasn't a very good result for a charge. In the opposite direction, 2 hits are scored. The Dragon Rider fails his save, and so 1 hit is taken in the other direction. The combat is a draw once again. Both sides fall back. That brings us to the important combat here. Now, it was noticed based on the follow-up moves that these two combats in the field are separated. There is the one that the general is engaged with, and then there's the one a little bit off the screen to the right where there is a single spearman facing off against 4 units of undead. So the general decided to take this attack on screen first. He put a lot of attacks into those skeleton archers to try and win the combat quickly. Managed to score 2 hits there, bringing them to a total of 3. Then in return, the skeletons managed to get 1 hit back, but that was not saved. And so that's going to result in the archers dying for the elven side as well. However, when you look at the combat results and both of those units down, that means that that unit of skeletons has lost the combat by 1 and is forced to withdraw. It must go sideways. It runs into engaged friends just to the left of it. That eliminates it as well, and that takes the Tomb Kings to their breakpoint. So a close run battle. The Tomb Kings reached their breakpoint of 13. The High Elves were 1 away at 8. The Tomb Kings lost 1,070 points, and the High Elves lost 775. So overall, a victory to the High Elves. This is how things stood at the end of the battle. You can see there was a lot of maneuvering in different phases here. I felt this was a pretty good representation of a Warmaster style battle, even though we're playing Mini-Warmaster here. Quite an interesting game, lots going on. A lot of different outcomes could have happened. Even though we made a couple of small mistakes along the way, I don't think it really affected the outcome too much. So that was a 2,000 point playtest of Mini-Warmaster using a few different types of units. Let me know in the comments what you feel about this, and if you like the battle, I'll put more of them together. Maybe not at this size, we might go back to smaller battles in the future, and I'll also be trying to put together a few more narrative battles with Dark Elves and Chaos. But that's enough for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.